Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. At AM 630. WMAL.
Good morning. It is 6:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Got a great show lined up for you today. Later in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking to Stuart Varney. Joe Theismann, great day to have him here. Talk about the Redskins and the fact that the strike of the referees is over.
It wasn't a strike, it was a lockout.
Okay, a lockout, right. You're correct. You're correct on that. And we can mention, I think, that we are scheduled to interview Mitt Romney on the show tomorrow.
That's right. It's going to be cool.
How about them apples? We start now, though, by turning to Patrick Gonzales, who has Gonzales Research in Maryland, and he's done a tremendous amount of research about several things that is important to Marylanders. You know, of some of these items that are going to be on the ballot that have to do with things like the DREAM Act and same-sex marriage and gambling, and as well as some of the horse races, how they're shaping up right now. He joins us on the line. Patrick, how are you?
I'm good. Good to be with you.
All right, so let's start by some of these items that Marylanders are going to have to decide on. I think perhaps the two that are most interesting to most people are the initiative on same-sex marriage and gambling. Let's start with same-sex marriage. Where are Marylanders on that?
Well, we found among Maryland voters, 51% say they're going to vote for Question 6, same-sex marriage. 43% said they were going to vote against it, and 6% were undecided.
Did you say that? I think I read somewhere that you sort of have a gut feeling about that 6.3%.
I'm sorry.
There's a belief that some people say that the 6% that's undecided, they're really against it, but they just don't want to tell you they're against it.
No, I'm not sure I subscribe to that whole.
Okay.
But it's a little bit it's certainly closer at this point than the DREAM Act seems to be.
Why I was surprised at the DREAM Act. It seemed to have large support for the DREAM Act, which would allow illegal immigrants to get in-state tuition at colleges. Were you surprised at that number? Why do you think that one seems to be more one-sided than the other questions?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I think the President Obama has come out in the past 6 months and publicly pronounced on both those issues, both the DREAM Act, it's a little bit different at the federal level,
right,
and same-sex marriage. I think that's had an impact. And I think as the election gets near, people are starting to focus in on it. And what the DREAM Act has is it's got 75% support among Democrats in the state, and 70% support among African Americans, and that is a combination in Maryland that is.
It's a victory combination, is what that is.
Victory combination.
All right, now about gambling. Where do Marylanders come down on the issue of gambling?
Voters are split: 45% for, and 46% against, with 9% undecided. 6 weeks to go.
And you know what that means, of course, more commercials on radio and television from both sides.
Well, $20 million I hear has been spent so far by both sides, so at least double that, maybe triple it. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. On the horse race, it's usually not much of a horse race when you have statewide elections in Maryland. It certainly hasn't been in recent elections. But I was surprised to see that Rob Sabani, who's the independent candidate for Senate in Maryland, polling at 21%, Dan Bongino, the Republican candidate, coming in at 22%, and Ben Cardin, the incumbent, only at 50%. I mean, that's still good news for Cardin, but the fact that he was only getting 50% right now, why is it that Ben Cardin is only getting about 50%?
Well, he's getting 2.5 times what anyone else.
Sure. I mean, he's going to win, it seems like, from these poll numbers. But
the reason I think simply that he's only getting 50% is because Rob Sabani has spent well over $1 million on television ads. It's having an impact, and he's pulling about 16% of the Democratic vote. And he's running almost even with Cardin at this point among independents. He's getting 38% of the vote. So I think those two things contribute. And name recognition means something, and Rob Sabani has gained it in the past month with his television ads.
You can't turn on the TV
and not see that commercial
without seeing Rob Sabani. I mean, I
don't watch much TV, and I've seen 100 Sabani ads and probably 150 gambling ads.
But I wonder if you combine Sabani and Bongino, then it's a much closer race. I mean, if there were just one of those guys standing, is it possible that Cardin could have a real run for his money?
Well, again, he's up by almost 30 points at this point, so you'd have to have a two-way race to see. I doubt it. My suspicion is if Sabani wasn't in the race, Cardin would be up probably in the mid-50s.
Would you have any belief or thoughts if Bongino had the money that Sabani had right now and was airing as many commercials as Sabani was, whether or not he would be much higher than 22%?
He doesn't have the money, and I guess it's the old if the tree falls and no one's there, does it make a noise? Yeah. I don't know.
Right. All right. So obviously we talk to pollsters all the time and say, hey, you got to figure out who will actually show up at the polls. So in your opinion, in Maryland at least, who do you think will show up at the polls? I mean, will it be something like we saw in 2008? Would it be more like 2004, 2002? Where do you see the turnout like?
I think you're right. I think 2008 was one model, 2004 was another. And I think this time, and without trying to dodge the question, I think it's going to be a little of both. I mean, you've got a couple of hot button issues on the ballot, and I think that's going to bring out both sides. Turnout in presidential elections is high anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be even a little higher this time. But I don't really see it favoring. I don't see a huge pro or anti side. I see an increase among both.
Well, let me ask you, because this is not an unimportant question, both in Maryland but also nationwide, because a lot of people are looking at the polls right now and saying, well, some of these polls are way oversampling Democrats, and they're basing it on the 2008 model, which many people think was sort of a wave election and very different from what's likely to happen this time. Do you buy into that?
Well, in Maryland's pretty.
Yeah, but I'm talking about nationwide.
Nationwide, do I buy into the theory that some polls oversample Democrats?
Right.
Yes, I do.
All right.
Some, not all.
Right. The gay marriage question, it seems like it has support right now. There were some who are in favor of gay marriage were very concerned that the gambling issue would wind up on the ballot as well, and vice versa. Do you see a possibility of, say, gambling passing and same-sex marriage passing at the same time? Some people thought that if you couple them together, they're either both going to pass or both going to go down.
I don't see that. Insiders like us, political junkies, we think that way. The average voter does not think that way. Now, there is some similarity in that African American voters a majority are against both of those initiatives at this point,
right.
But the intensity is against gambling is stronger at this point among African Americans
than gay marriage. All right,
marriage.
Patrick Gonzales, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much. A lot for us to at least talk about over this that we appreciate.
Well,